one day, another headhunter called and said, okay, we have this company, Quaker Chemical, in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, that has a new CEO, a gentleman by the name of Ron Naples, and who was trying to hire a new HR person as part of his management team. And I always wanted to be, at that point in time, head of HR for a publicly traded company. Romplank Rohr Pharmaceuticals, or today Sanofi, because it was a French company, I sort of knew that wasn't going to happen culturally. And I understood it. And so here was this opportunity at Quaker, which was this global company that was kind of starting over in the sense of a new CEO. And it was an opportunity for me to get in on the ground floor and really gave me a real learning on how a company, especially a public company, looks towards growth and what's important to Wall Street, as it relates to how they grow and the importance of stock price, but also the importance of having a business strategy, having a sound management team, delivering value to your customers and so forth, because in their case, it was the steel industry and automotive industry. And I had a chance to build the processes. We talked a little bit earlier about processes, and when it comes to the HR kinds of things, the importance was I was able to build, along with a lot of other people, but to help lead the whole strategy the company had about the type of talent they wanted to bring in place, the compensation systems, worked with the management team and CEO about culture and environment. I had the chance there to work with a board of directors, which I had never done before, and trying to understand how that whole process works and so forth. So it was a great learning experience for me in the 7 or so years I was there. But I got to a point of saying, okay, when I look at corporate America, is it really the thing I want to do for the next 20 years? I spent a lot of time doing some market research up front, trying to talk to people to see, okay, was the concept of a boutique HR consulting practice going to be successful or not in sort of that's what I call the small to mid-size marketplace. And it would tell you that kind of the outcome of it is that, I think people thought it was, but there were some skeptics to see whether it would work or not. And I think if I look at the last 14 years I've been in business, those first 3 years were really tough. My marketing person would say to me, Jim, you got to meet 5 new people a week. You got to get the message out about what you're doing. That's number one. My sales training guy, because I went into a sales training program mainly due to the fact that I was used to selling up inside of an organization and good at it. But when it came to selling really myself and the intellectual capital that I had, it was kind of never done this before. Mm-hmm. So I went through a whole Sandler process that kind of helped me figure out what to get done. And then, but those first 3 years, it was really about meeting as many people as I possibly could and network about what it is we do, how we're going to do it, and what's going to work. And for me, it was more, I've come to the conclusion that we do the best work in small to mid-sized businesses. How do I build a brand, and how do I build value, and how do I make sure that what we're doing as a firm really makes sense and can help that business owner grow? Because from an HR perspective, it's an interesting field, as kind of we all know. But for me, it was all about first the business, make sure I understand the business, and then help them put in the right solutions based on what's going to grow their business. Yes, there's things that need to be done legally and in compliance with all the laws, state and city and federal and all that. But the most important thing is if you're designing an organization structure, you're designing one that's going to work for the company.
Assuming this number 2 person was a pretty qualified person to kind of take a little of that load off him a little bit, right? Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it was. But what was interesting is, since this was his first number 2, I would tell you it lasted maybe about a year and a half. And then the cultural fit wasn't right. Right. And then we had to go back out and recruit somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that person now has been there for a couple of years, and it has worked.
Okay.
So I think the story there really is, and I have this conversation with owners all the time, okay, you have to stop working in the business and hands-on in that business. You need to think a little bit bigger about working on the business. And then, okay, if you're going to hire somebody, you're going to have to, which we do for people. I mean, the point is you got to hire a person who's got skill set a little different than your own, and realize you've got to set up a certain type of accountability and responsibility and authority for that person. But at the same time, sometimes in the beginning, as in this particular case, it's not always going to work out the right way. But it means that, okay, just because it didn't work out once doesn't mean you go back to your same old way of being in the business all the time. You just go back out and hire the right person with the right skill set who brings the right type of help and assistance and other things to bear that you need in order to grow that. The real question is, well, do you hire a firm like ours to do the recruiting for you, or you do it on your own? The point is, today, I will say most of the work is done through social media technology. So if you look at professional positions such as engineers, HR director, finance manager, CIO, other type of jobs, I mean, today, you find sources like LinkedIn and others that are really, really key towards looking to attract and find the right type of talent. That's number one. Number two, it's your network. I mean, I can give you an example today. I'm recruiting for a CIO position for one of my clients, and I've been able to identify probably 50 potential candidates just through my network alone. That are people who are quality candidates. So I would use your network as a way to do that as well. Also, when it comes to the interviewing, you need to understand what you're going to interview people about. So what type questions are you going to ask people? Be prepared in advance. You might decide on a committee of people to interview as well. And then it's important to make sure that you are going through a process of where you're then comparing all the candidates together. So some people talk about putting together a checklist and other type of things as part of the interview process. And then making a decision also to who's going to be the best cultural fit. Because I would tell you in my career, most people have the technical skills, but it really comes down to, does the person fit the culture and environment that you have? Because that will ensure that an individual is going to be successful in their job. Then when it goes to talking to those candidates in a larger company, like I'm doing today for this CIO position, it's really about talking to them about the opportunity that they're going to have to impact the business, right? Most people, I would tell you, at professional level, regardless whether it's an industrial engineer, HR person, CFO, marketing person, CIO, in coming from these larger organizations, they want to know, am I going to be able to have impact? Am I going to be able to help the company grow in some way, shape, or form? So that's one of the most important things. Where the challenge is really becomes not as much in the base compensation, but it's in the benefit programs, right? Because in these larger companies, they have very competitive benefit programs. And the challenge we find is that in smaller businesses, they just can't afford it. And everybody gets it. The candidate gets it. I get it, et cetera. But that becomes a challenge. And how we get around usually that challenge, which most owners probably aren't going to want to hear, but it means we end up having to pay people a little more money in base salary to make sure that that kind of works. Or in some other cases, we look at people who are covered in their significant other or spouse's benefit program, so that when it comes to that differential, which you usually find more in the health insurance or medical insurance perspective, they don't really need the medical. But, you know, as any client would, and I would, and I'm sure you would as well, I mean, you want the best talent you can get, and you want people that have the various tools in their toolkit. But the real bottom line point is you have to have a hook. And what is that hook that's going to help me or help themselves when they're talking to candidates as to why you should come work for me?